Alright, so I'm just going to do the tactical analysis for the F4 F3 Wildcat versus the A6 M2 Zero. I think I'll only do the first 3 rounds because the last round was pretty much a wipeout. We'll see how far we get there. So straight off the bat, this is supposed to be a historical dogfight. So it's a matchup between the F4 F3, which only has 4 machine guns. The F4 F4 gets introduced after the Battle of Coral Sea, and this fight was supposed to be a recreation of Coral Sea, or the matchup between the two aircraft that would have seen combat at Coral Sea. So yeah, we've got the Wildcat with the 4 machine guns up against the A6M2, the first version of the Zero. So yeah, there's a reason why the Zero is at BR 3.7 and the Wildcat's only at 2.3. The Zero can basically outdo us in every aspect of our airframe. It can outclimb, it can outturn. In terms of energy retention, we have slightly better characteristics, but it's like that much slight, right? Very slight. In one of the fights, you'll see me slightly extend away in a dive from Zero, but that is it. That's pretty much all the Wildcat has on top of the Zero. In terms of armament, like I said, we only have 4 machine guns. They've got two 20 mils and 2 machine guns. The 20 mils are really deadly. They pretty much just one tap us. I think historically the armament on Japanese aircraft against American airframes, from what you can read and hear, American aircraft can take quite a lot of hits. This was apparent in both the Pacific and in the European theater. But in game, that doesn't exist. It's not how the weapons and the damage models mechanically in the game modeled. That's not how it works. So yeah, 20 mils here. Once they hit us, we're gone. So we'll cover the first 2 rounds. So the first 2 rounds are basic dueling rules. So we both climb up to the same altitude, turn into the capture zone, fly past each other into the merge, and then once we get into the merge, then we are allowed to engage each other. There's no initial hit-on passes allowed. So we'll run the tape here for the first round. So I'm the flight leader, but because this is the first time that all of us have done it, we basically had a lot of problems with trying to get the formation flying done. So pick is off to my front left here. I'm the yellow fighter. I couldn't switch the colors of the Japanese players because we were all in the squad. The way the game is designed, we all have to be in the same squad before we can get into this custom match. And so they show up as green as well. This is the fastest way to set up the match. I wasn't gonna like fiddle around and try get them the password and all that. I might do that another time, but yeah, for this one, everyone shows up as green, so you just need to pay attention to the tags on top, the A6M2 that identifies them as the Japanese players. So yeah, my wingman pick, he's off to my front and left there because we had tons of trouble trying to get into formation. The second round onwards, he gets a hang of it and we get better formations. But yeah, for here, I'm the flight lead. Pap is leading the Japanese flight, partly because he ended up taking control of all their game plans for all 4 rounds, and Flank is the better pilot of the two, so he relegated himself to flying the wingman because it's much easier for him to get information than to ask Pap to get information. So those are the two matchups going on there. So we go in here, I call, we'll break right into the merge, and then we'll try to figure out something from there. We had a test flight before where we played 1 round, and the Wildcats actually managed to win, but it was because the Japanese players were completely inexperienced and didn't know what they were doing. So that's the reason why we won that one. But for this one, everyone's been briefed a little bit more, and they kind of know what to expect. So we get into the merge, we break right. So as you can see there, one mistake is that with having your wingman out of position like that, further forward and in front and not right next to the leader and behind, is that there's this part where he goes forward for a good second or two straight, which basically gives the enemy an advantage because we're extending out in a fight against far faster, far more maneuverable aircraft. This is why formation flying, if you're doing like a historical dogfight like this, you need to be right in point. If you watch my earlier videos, I tell that when it comes to formation flying, you don't need to be like this close and that. But that's because in a real match, when it's 16v16, and you have, you know, all the markers are up, and you also have the fog of war where you kind of know where the enemy should appear because of how the airfields are placed and all that. It's not that important. But for a tight dogfight like this, where we're trying to simulate something, it does end up factoring in a lot more. So that's another point we would like to raise there. So we get into the turn here. We both break right. The Japanese players elect to break up. So one went left, one went right. Okay. So for now, usually if the disparity in aircraft wasn't like this large, we would have an isolated position here on the left side where we've got two Wildcats engaging this 1-0. But as you can see, the other guy on the right here is coming in. He's already turned in because he can do that. And so what was going to be an isolated position in reality wasn't at all. So the reason why the second 0 off to the right there doesn't elect to engage pick is because the Japanese game plan here is to double team me because I'm the better pilot of the two here. So that's what you're going to see here, but they do end up switching, I think, halfway. I could be wrong. So pick gets a snapshot off, but breaks away, and yeah. So like I said earlier at the start, we could see a 2v1 isolated situation, which doesn't work because of disparity in aircraft. And you can see here, disparity of aircraft. The Zeros managed to isolate me because the Wildcats just can't keep up. And Pick here, he goes off into a dive and loop back up, and is just too little, too late because even if he had a 0, he would have been able to make this turn a lot sooner and would have been able to get in behind them. But no, it wasn't going to happen here. So I take them both up into the vertical and see whether I can set up a shot for Pick. But he's too far away now. He can't do anything. He tries to take some long range shots here. This right here, the shots here, if he had managed to land it, would have won us the game. Because in the 2-on-1 with the Wildcats against the 0, and at this point I haven't taken I haven't taken a hit at this point. If he managed to land his shots and knock out one of the 0s, we would be good. But that didn't happen. So upon seeing that I was able to stall them out just barely, if you watch the actual game, Pat basically makes a wrong maneuver and he doesn't quite get his guns on me when I stall out. Yeah. So right there we have the first time where someone actually does take proper shots on Pick, but that's just because Pick ends up being in front of the guns of the second 0 behind there. So Flank, I'm pretty sure is the guy that's right behind me. So he follows me all the way down to the deck here, and then he breaks off because Pick's right on him. And since I'm at the lower altitude now, and like we've already established, they're far better airframes. They can allow me to just go down to the deck, and they know that I'm not going to be able to really be much of a threat to them because I don't have any kind of good climb rate or cannons to reach them at range from below. So, yep, Pick gets some shots into flank there. I think he misses. Pat takes a shot on me. Get into some vertical maneuvers here. And I die. So I take a cannon round to my right wing in the first pass there. And that basically kills most of my lift on my right wing. So when I try to do a barrel roll to try evade Flank's second attack, yeah, he just smokes me. So that's the end of that. Pick's already stalled out and he's trying to get in shots there. And it's basically over at this point. I'm not going to roll anything else here. So we'll go on to the second round. Okay, here's the second round. So we're a much better formation here on both sides. Could be a little bit better, could be a bit tighter. So now here, as you can see, the break-in much cleaner, much better. We have given up the advantage of having, flown extra 3 seconds straight forward against 0s here. So what they elect to do here is that the Japanese players, they break right instead of trying to split. One goes into a flat turn, one goes into a slight vertical yo-yo. We elect to stay in uh, the flat turn here. Pick decides to go down. Yeah, so in this case here, they decide not to double team, which is probably the better of the two, just because of the aircraft disparity. So I go down right there. I try getting in shots on flank. Yeah, I think that's flank. It might be Pep, but the zero that's behind pick basically. I get a good 2 second window, and I did not hit him, and then I die. And from then on, it's basically over. But yeah, it was better for them to just put 1-0 on one Wildcat just because they have all the advantage. Even though one pilot has more skill and disparity, when it's like this far apart, it really doesn't matter that much. So we'll go on to the third round here. Okay, so for the third and fourth rounds, we don't have any dueling rules. It's just everyone spawn in, and it's a free-for-all game plan. So what I said to pick was I was trying to think of like how to deal with this. So the historical counterparts, they had like the thatch weave, which is basically a defensive maneuver where both aircraft in an element, they turn into each other multiple times in a weave kind of thing. On a flat plane, I don't think there's any vertical movements to it, so it's just both planes into each other and then back out and then back in. Uh, in a 2v1 that works out. But in a 2v2 situation, especially in War Thunder, I really don't see the application of it because it just means you put more variables to your pilots because now they have to avoid, mid-air collisions when they're trying to turn into each other. And at the same time, the enemy, they have full picture because you have the massive marker on top of everybody. They can see what's going on. They can see where you are, how what the distance is. They can gauge your speed as well. It doesn't really quite work out. And in this case here, even though we try to pull it off, it doesn't quite work out. It just it turns into its own kind of maneuver that happens here. So, but that's what I try to tell Pick, and it doesn't work out for the next reason is that the zeros here have altitude. So usually in the thatch weave, it assumes that you're already in the same altitude and that the enemy is coming in from behind you. I know there's a variation of the thatch weave, which is an offensive maneuver where you can attack someone that's in front of you, but I'll cover that another time. But here we have both zeros because they have superior climb rate. They're already on top of us. And the big mistake here, which I don't know why they did, because I already taught this before, and this principle applies no matter whether you're trying to simulate something or even you're a normal 16v16 match. The only way you can support each other is if you're within weapons range of each other. I put this in the video before. The distance between the two zeros here basically means they've isolated themselves and there's no mutual support whatsoever. So what happens here is that when flank dives in on us, he's in the 2-on-1 situation for a good 3-4 seconds before Pat comes in. And you're going to see me capitalize on this in this fight here. But going back to the thatch weave, because Pig is still quite inexperienced with formation flying, he should be parallel to me, but he is off into the front and to the left. He's supposed to be on the left. That's what I called here. We're supposed to bracket flank here as he comes down into the fight. I'm off to the right, he's off to the left. We wanted 500 meter separation, but he's further out forward. So what happens here is that flank, upon seeing that, he just goes for the fighter that's lagging behind, which is me in this case. So there's no real opportunity to use the weave because the weave assumes that both of the fighters are parallel to each other, like exactly the same in terms of distance towards the enemy, which isn't the case here. So yeah, okay, we're running forward. You can see there. Pat takes a really long time trying to turn in. If I was him, I would have just gone straight in for an intercept. So I would have pulled the lead on the Wildcats here and just flown above straight away. But instead, he elects to take this long route around, which basically, like I said, keeps flank isolated here as flank makes his attack. So yeah, you can see that the weave doesn't work here just because of how far apart Pick is in terms of his latitude. He is much forward than I am. So even though we try to do the weave, it's not really a thatch weave at this point. So flank dives in, I break left, Pick breaks right, which was the plan. Um, so Pick managed to get behind flank here. I'm in a rolling scissors with flank. So I take him down slightly. Turn back in, and when I turn back in and turn back up, I see Pap. So at this point, I take a hit on with Pap. And the reason why I take the hit on here is just because I said we managed to isolate flank, and Pig is behind flank, which, you know, compared to the last two fights means we are positionally already in a much, much better advantage. And when I see Pap come down for his vertical attacking on here, if you watch the actual gameplay, you can see that he's inverted and to the right, which means that if we go head on here, as long as I don't see Pap's cockpit, I know that he's not going to be able to pilot snipe me, just because he's in an inverted angle and because of the way, you know, lift works, the angle of attack of the wings, he's going to be pulling away from me. So long as I can't see his cockpit in that straight on head on, which I don't, I was gonna just stick with it and take the shots. And you can tell that his 20 mil, instead of hitting my pilot, it actually hits the engine cowling just because of the angle of which he's approaching me. So I take the 20 mil to the engine, and the engine just completely gets knocked out. I get hit into his engine, but I don't quite knock him out. But this will come into play later. He's already quite damaged. So yeah, we take the hit on there. I do a roll. Pick is still dogfighting with flank, and in terms of position, he's neutral now. He was in an an advantage position. Now he's neutral, and now I'm coming back in here. And Pap once Pap takes those hits, he decides to extend away, which is another big mistake here, because they already have the advantage in terms of airframe, like by miles ahead. There's no reason to extend away here. Especially after you've already traded, you know, basically knocked out my engine. His engine isn't knocked out, but it is hurt. So we had a neutral position there, but now flank has managed to get in behind Pick. So it was like, you know, 2 turns. The 0 does that to the Wildcat. 1.5 turns, and it's already from a disadvantaged position. He's already got the advantage. But now I'm coming in down here without my engine, but because Pick is taking them low, it doesn't quite matter. I'm in a dive, so I've got speed still maintaining speed. And I get in tons of hits here, all good hits. Pat makes his attack on the back in here. He misses all his shots. I stay in the turn with flank, and round about here I nail him. I don't know what Pap was doing. Pap right there should have been able to turn in to the right, but instead he elects to turn left, so he doesn't get any shots on me. And I basically nail flank here. Pick takes some snapshots on Pap, who's still trying to engage me. He ignores Pick. And right here, because of the damage I've sustained, when I try to do a rudder deflection to evade, I go right into the ocean. But from here on out, as you can see the speed differences, Pap with this damage engine, and because we've already gone in this low, I don't think Pick got hurt that badly. I think he's completely fine. For the first time ever, we have a Wildcat with complete energy advantage over 0. And he just nails him here. There's nothing Pap can do. And that's the end of the game right there. That's the last shot. Yeah, I didn't bother recording the 4th round because they solve all the mistakes that happened here. They didn't split up so far, and once the dogfight commenced, they both stuck with it all the way and just wiped us with altitude advantage. So yeah.